So the discussion of consultants, expertise can be crucial in any large deployment, particularly these complex deployments that we have, and not just with Legito, but the rollout of really any enterprise solution. Our next speaker, Lorena Rocha, is a managing associate at Refin Associates, which is a member of Deloitte Legal. She has experience in legal operations, process improvement, design of legal operation models, and implementation of legal technology. Lorena is going to discuss with you her thoughts on achieving success in digital transformation. So please give a hand for Lorena and welcome her to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here. As John nicely said, I work with Deloitte Legal. By background, I'm a lawyer. But in the last couple of years, since I've been always passionate about technology and making life easier for lawyers, but not only, I've helped clients streamline the way they operate with contracts, how they manage day-to-day tasks related to contracts. So today I want to talk to you about how can a consultant help you with a digital transformation, but mostly focused around contracts. We know digital transformation can and generally affects the entire organization. I want to start with a bit of framework, and the framework that we use to help clients to find a bit their direction. Digital transformation is such a big word. You can go in so many directions. I think it's very important to, first of all, think about where you are now and where you want to go. And this task is not always that easy. We always have aspirations. We naturally tend to be idealistic. But I think it's very important to be realistic about where you are, where your team is, and where you want to go. And this is a question of maturity of the team, of the technology that you have already in the organization, but it's also a question of maturity of the technology that can support you. There is a lot of hype and marketing talk about technology, but as most of you are probably aware of, there is a big gap between marketing presentations, talk, and the reality of putting the technology into real life, into the day-to-day life of your companies. And I think it's also important to be realistic of how many steps you want to go forward. Of course, now we all hear about ChatGPT, AI, transforming our lives. But if you are now working with documents, let's say in a traditional way, in Word, saving them locally, or perhaps in a SharePoint, transitioning directly to a, I don't know, idealistic AI type of solution might be a step too far. So our recommendation would be to take it slow. Technology transformation is a journey. It's not so easy to jump steps, and to be realistic about where you are and where you want to go. And if we're talking about the maturity of technology, this is a Gartner hype chart from last year. I think it's important to realize that technology have a natural hype peak. As you might see on the slide, we have a lot of technologies which are mainly either in the hype phase, like, I don't know, AI, ChatGPT, this kind of things, or maybe we have technology who are now more mature. And I think contract management is one of the technologies that has reached now maturity, both in terms of functionalities, value for money. If you wanted to buy such a technology, I would say, I don't know, 5-7 years ago, it would have costed a lot more, and perhaps the functionalities would have been much more limited. And I think this is one of the key areas where we see clients being interested and really putting effort into having something into real life. I think AI and ChatGPT is now entering the maturity phase. It's, of course, very good on perhaps more broader topics, but for specific, very applied knowledge like contracts, like legal work, I think there is still work to be done to have it bringing real value to your day-to-day lives. The next topic that I would like to cover is that when we see clients, interested in technology, wanting to make things happen in their organizations, we see several challenges that they need to overcome, and we can group them in 3 big categories. The first one is knowledge. There are so many technology solutions out there, either specialized on contracts, more broadly for documents, or special tools for sales or procurement, which also have document type of features. And it's very hard to keep track, to know what is best for your organization. It's not one size fits all. You really have to know what you're after. And it's indeed a challenge even for us as a consultants who constantly research the market to keep track. Secondly, and very importantly, I would say it's a challenge about resources, and in particular in this context where we are today, it's hard to convince management to get the budget for this type of investment. How do you build a business case around it? And who will actually work on the project, because contracts are at the core of the company. They impact the organization from the ordering phase, the procurement phase, and up to the finance phase, where you have to pay invoices, make sure that they respect the contract, and so on. And being at the core of the organization, this means you have to find people involved in the project who really understand contracts, because otherwise the consultants or the technology provider cannot work without your particular input. So it's hard to find people, to find time in people's diaries to contribute to this type of engagement. Thirdly, and this is a topic that I would not understate, it's a bit of reluctance. So, of course, in every team there is this innovation type of person who is very open and keen to change and is the ambassador of change. But many people feel fear when we talk about technology, the fear of being replaced, the fear that their job will no longer be relevant. And I think it's important to recognize this and to think of ways of how we can encourage these people to get on board and to feel more comfortable with technology. Because in the end, I think it's very important to understand that this is a people process. So, of course, you're buying technology, but technology is used by your colleagues, by your employees. So it's very important to have everyone on the same boat. How a consultant can help tackle these challenges? I would say, again, there are three key areas where we can bring value. Firstly, expertise, and I think this is quite self-explanatory. Putting up in place the proper governance and helping you to build a network of resources that will help you turn this technology project into reality. And I will deep dive a bit on each topic. If we're thinking about expertise, of course, a consultant has been in this project several times with other clients across various industries, and I myself have seen how a similar problem put in a different context, for example, a regulated client like a bank, has completely different views and so on with, I don't know, an unregulated type of player like a real estate investment fund or a chemicals company. But even so, there are common lessons and common issues that every company faces, and I think it's important to learn from the lessons of others and try to avoid the same mistakes. And secondly, we as consultants invest a lot of time into getting to know the solutions and not just reading on the websites. We constantly do demos with them. We put difficult questions, we test them, so we really spend a lot of time into knowing the market. And this is very valuable because, as said, when you will embark on this journey and you will Google contract management or document automation, you will find hundreds of results. It's very difficult to navigate between all these providers, and the consultant can help you narrow down a bit the list, considering your priorities and your needs. Okay, this would be a list that would make sense for you. Very importantly, and this is something that I would not neglect, it's about process and templates and documents. A technology is as good as a process is. If you just move your current templates and your current processes onto a technology platform, most likely you will face pretty much the same issues. So it's important to think about how you can improve things, and a consultant can help you because it can challenge a bit your stakeholders. It can put questions that perhaps they didn't think about, and you can find new ways of doing things so that you really put to value the technology. For example, if all contracts go to legal and legal is a bottleneck, it doesn't make sense to do the same with the technology. You can leverage the technology so that only contracts with a certain value or with a certain type of risk nature go to legal. Or if it's the other way around, legal gets bypassed and a lot of contracts get signed with no control, you can make sure to put the proper approval flow so that legal gets involved. Speaking about governance, I think a consultant can help you build a very good picture of who are your stakeholders, building a stakeholder map who is not too wide so that you don't get the project done, but not too narrow so that you get stuck when you actually start working on the implementation. We've seen cases where, for example, procurement started the project, legal was involved at the end, they were not happy with what procurement had selected. So I think it's very important to make sure that you properly manage stakeholders. And also how you manage team communication, making sure that you deliver a clear message on what are the objectives with the implementation of technology, what are the benefits, how will the team be involved in the testing, in providing feedback in the implementation, so that they are aware, and predictability helps a lot with mitigating the fear that some of them have. And very importantly, how do you manage change? This is not an easy topic. Okay, you bought the technology, you have the processes, but how do you get people to actually use it and, I don't know, make use of it in their day-to-day lives? And here what we recommend is, start small, start with a basic contract and gradually build on it, because if you put a lot of change pressure on people, they usually pull back and they go back to their old habits of Word and email, and this is not what you want. And very importantly, I would say, is also project steering. There are strategic decisions to be taken when you implement this kind of technology. For example, and this is what we see in most companies, they have several digital transformations at once. For example, sales tools, procurement tools, and you also want a contract tool. Well, how do all these link together? What type of functionalities do you want? How do we integrate them? These are critical elements, and you have to think very well about who will be taking decisions, and a consultant can help you build this structure and also provide advice on pros and cons and help you guide through this maze. Thirdly, it's about building a network of resources, and I think the most important resource that you have to think about and building a network of support is internal stakeholders. So, for example, we have seen many cases where legal wanted to be a project sponsor of this, but it's very hard to build a business case without sales or procurement putting effort into this and convincing management to go forward with it. And we can also help with this. Of course, this is mostly an internal type of topic, but it's important to be aware of it. And of course, I think this is the most intuitive type of benefit that a consultant can have, because we have a team of experts doing this every day, either if we're talking about process or template. Experts like myself, I usually deal with designing templates in the way that you really put to value the automation features in the tools, or process design so that you really take advantage of the features of the solution, or technical experts. And I think this is very valuable, because what we see is that most of the companies have champions who are very good at their work, who are innovative, who can contribute to these discussions, but their time is very limited. They don't have the time to really draft templates in a way that they make sense for a solution or design processes. So here is where we can help to bring that extra hand so that we make the project happen under a shorter timeline. And I think very importantly, we also have a network of technology partners, various technology providers like Legito, who kindly invited me here. And we can put you in contact with various people that can help bring your project to reality. I've tried to put here a couple of things to have in mind when considering buying a contract management solution. Some of them I'm pretty sure you've thought about them. I don't think any of them is a surprise. But I think it's good to have a visualization of them. Sometimes you have so many things to consider when buying a tool that just putting a list and allocating some priorities to it makes a lot of sense. Of course, for some companies, some elements might be more important, for others, other elements might be more critical, but I think irrespective of the industry, these are elements that you should be thinking about when making a decision. I won't go into too much details into this, but I think it's important just to, let's say, have an overview. And I think the critical topic is functionality. It's very important to think what you really need and what is a nice to have. For example, if you deal with a lot of contracts on the template of the provider or your client, it doesn't make sense to invest in a tool who has very complex drafting features, because most of your cases is just about reviewing the contracts of others. Or if you have contracts who have a lot of obligations after the contract is signed, it's important to have a tool that can help you, for example, make sure you renew the contract or you renegotiate, or that you provide the necessary documentation. So it's important to think about what is important for you. The next topic would be around accuracy, stability, user experience. A tool is of no relevance if the data is broken, if the user experience is bad and the users are not compelled to actually use it and have the data there. The tool should be very scalable. Contracts build up in time. You can end up with thousands of contracts, and it's important that the search engine is scalable, that it still works well with scale. Of course, cost and time to go live, I think, are crucial. Budget is very important, and timing as well. But a topic which sometimes is overlooked is the vendor. Who is the vendor? It's one thing to talk with an established company where, okay, you might have some predictability, but very low flexibility for new features or to adapt the tool to you. Or if you're talking with a company that is now scaling, who is much more open to adapt to your needs. Of course, there are pros and cons for each option, but I think it's important to recognize the type of vendor that you want to work with. The technology type for some companies, for example, in the regulated industry, it might be difficult to work in the cloud. Integration is a very important topic. As I said, contracts are at the core of the organization. They move from the procurement sales team until the finance team when orders and invoices are paid. So it's important to make sure that you have a tool that can easily integrate with those systems. Data security, it's a no-brainer, so to say. Quality of maintenance and support, I would say it's very important as well. You will realize that after you start using it, you find all sorts of bugs and issues, and you need help to overcome this. And I think the pipeline of development is also very important. You usually buy this tool for at least 3-4 years. So it's important to understand how the tool will evolve, and if you think it's evolving in the direction that you need for your own needs. And a last topic, liability. Contracts contain sensitive information, critical information for your company. It's important to, in particular if you're in the cloud, make sure that you have the proper liability in place. To sum up, I would say there are a few ingredients for success. And I think from my perspective, the most important one is to manage expectations. People tend to think that technology can solve any problem. Okay, we have a tool, now everything will be perfect. It's not really the case, and in particular for complex topics like contracts. Irrespective of the tool, a contract has a detailed set of information that you need to get there, so it is what it is. Technology will help, will make contracts more accessible, but it's important to manage expectations, that it's not perfect, it won't solve all problems. And I think, as mentioned, it's very important to think about process, templates, make sure that they are appropriate for the tool. And you gradually scale up. Learn from your mistakes. It's normal to have mistakes. It's not like you can know everything from, even with a consultant, you still test and you learn, and this is what we recommend to all clients. Start small and build steadily. And very importantly, communicate. Sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day activities, testing, or I don't know, our day-to-day work, that we forget to communicate to our colleagues. And I think it's important not to omit this step. And also governance, as I've already discussed. I think it's also important to think about how do we measure success. So, okay, we started this, we are already doing it for a while. How do we see we are in the right direction? Is it what we wanted or not? Of course, quantitative type of measuring would be ideal, but if you don't have data to measure the current state, so how many contracts do you have, how long it's taking to negotiate them, to draft them, and so on, it's quite hard to do a quantitative assessment. But I think qualitative elements should not be disregarded. I think efficiency, of course, one of the critical elements that can show that you are in the right direction. If you see that overall contracts are moving faster, this is a good indicator. Of course, costs, the amount of effort needed to tackle with contracts, this translates into lower costs, or perhaps the fact that the risk of having contracts going wrong and liability caused by contracts not properly managed, this is something, a cost element that you should consider. Risk and compliance, this is of course harder to measure because you usually measure risk when it happens, not that you avoided I don't know how many risks, but I think it's also an important thing to consider. Once you have things in a tool, the chances of things going south are a lot lower. And of course, user experience, people being happier working with contracts and having a better experience. So key takeaways, and to conclude the session, I think it's very important to think company-wide when you think about the contract management solution. Try to think beyond the legal. I usually, being a lawyer myself, I usually deal with the legal team, not that often with sales or procurement, and I think it's very important to have this open perspective, to scale in time, to give yourself the opportunity to learn from mistakes, to improve, and make sure that this is a team experience, because it's important to have everyone on board if you want the tool to be actually used. So thank you very much. I hope you found the discussion insightful.
All right, thank you, Lorena. That was great. Very good. So we had one question come in, and that is, what would be your recommendation in terms of steps that a legal team should take for the implementation of a CLM? What are the steps?
Steps. Well, if I were a legal director, I would start with being very realistic about resources, the resources that I can count on in the organization and so on, and decide quite early in the beginning if I need a consultant or not. If you might have the resources, then okay, if you feel confident, there's no need for a consultant. But if you do, bring them early in the game. Try to build a stakeholder map, who do you need to involve, and then start a kickoff discussion, discuss, okay, what would be the ambitions, what do you want to achieve, build a project team. Then I would start having discussions with the teams involved to make sure that I understand what are the priorities for my particular company, because, okay, you might have a good idea for your team, but most likely you don't have such a good idea for other teams that work with contracts, so getting a better understanding of what you need, and only afterwards start discussing with vendors, demos, proof of concepts, offers, and so on, so that you make sure that you have a very good picture of what you needed and where you want to go. And what I would strongly recommend after offers and so on, do a pilot, test it, make sure that it's right for you. Contract management solutions require a certain investment, and you want to make sure that you go in the right direction. And then start the implementation, work with the technology provider that you have selected, or the technology implementation partner, and build an agile type of implementation approach, because it's important to learn from mistakes and to give people the opportunity to get used to working in a different way. So this would be the key steps that I see. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it again. Thank everyone.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Lorena.
Bye-bye.
All right.